Hi everyone. We're going to be doing a full tutorial today on the Divina Tote and Bag by Bagstock Designs. Now this is for the second Siah Swag Swap. I love saying that. And there's going to be 4 bags you can choose from. And this is one of the 4. So there's going to be a tutorial on each of the bags, and that way it'll help you get through them. So for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Chris and I'm from Simply Classic. And if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would appreciate it if you did. Please, please, please subscribe. It helps us tremendously when you do. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go over all the pattern pieces. Now I'm going to follow the pattern exactly as it's written, unless I feel that it's going to save you time, it's going to save you bulk, or it's going to make the construction of the bag easier. And if any of those things happen and we change the way that the pattern is, you know, we get off kilter a little bit from the way the pattern's written, I'm going to let you know. And we're going to start right away because, of course, the first thing you need to do is print the pattern and cut out all the pieces. Now, what I did was I just cut out the pieces that had curves to them. Anything that was a straight line, she's got several pattern pieces here that are straight lines. She gives you the measurements for those pattern pieces. So just use your rotary cutter and your ruler to cut out those pieces, and that's going to save you some time because you're not going to have to cut out the pattern and then cut out the piece. The other thing that'll save a little time is if you need to use some woven fuse, if you go ahead and fuse your woven fuse to your cotton first and then cut out your pattern pieces. So that will save you from having to cut the pattern piece out of your main fabric and then have to turn around and cut it out again of your woven fuse. There's one exception to that. As we go through this, I will tell you which pattern piece that is. So we're going to start out by going over all the pattern pieces. I did have a couple of pieces I cut extra, and I'll tell you why when we get to those, and I'll give you the measurements for those. So the first thing you need to do is, well, let me tell you, I'm using some faux leather from Bodeeoh. I'm also using some home deck weight fabric from Bodeeoh. And then I'm using a linen for the lining. So the home deck weight, home decor weight, or fabric is a good weight. I don't have to put any Decoville or woven fuse or anything on it. The faux leather, I did not put any kind of woven fuse or Decoville on. But I did put some woven fuse too on the back of all the lining pieces. You're also going to have to cut some foam. This bag does call for some foam, and that just kind of helps it stand up a little straighter. So the first thing we're going to do is go over, like I said, these pieces. So we have 2 zipper tabs, and they're tiny little zipper tab pieces. So 2 of those. We have 2 handbag connectors. Now there is straps and then optional crossbody straps. So I'm going to go ahead and do the crossbody strap as well, and these are the connectors for that. We have a total of 4 main zipper closure panel pieces, and you're going to cut 4 pieces of your lining, and you're also going to cut 4 pieces of, and if you fuse your woven fuse to this, you won't have to cut 4 of those. You can just cut 4 all together, and they'll be good to go if you fuse them first. So I have 4. So this is for the zipper panel. So we have 4 of those. Then we have 2 lining pieces, and this is for the top of the lining. And I have woven fuse on those. You have 2 exterior front and middle. It's actually the front and back middle pieces. So I have 2 of those out of my faux leather. I have 2 short straps, and I have 1 long crossbody strap. Now, I went ahead and drew a line down the middle and then put some double-sided tape down each side of that line. We will do one of these together. I'll show you how to fold this in and stitch it, and then I'm going to do the other ones off camera. So those are straps. Then we have our gusset pieces. So in our gusset, we have 2 exterior pieces, and I did that out of my faux leather. We have 2 foam pieces. Then we have 2 lining pieces, and I did woven fuse on the back of those. Now, if you're using waterproof canvas, you actually do not have to put any kind of woven fuse or anything on your lining. Okay. Then we have our front and back top panels. So here's what they look like, front and back top panels. Now again, I did not put anything on the back of this. Then we have our exterior back bottom panel. Now this is one of the pattern pieces I did cut out because it has a curve. Okay, and here's the panel piece. So I have that ready to go. And she does give you these little chart of tabs that you can cut out. I definitely recommend you do that because some of these pattern pieces are similar in size. It'd be easy to mix them up. So I would definitely suggest you do that. This is the front bottom panel. Okay. So we have 1 of those. Then we have our bottom gusset piece. Now on the bottom gusset piece, I did it out of my faux leather. You have to cut a piece of either Peltex or Decorative Heavy. So I went ahead and did that. And my little circles here are for the feet. So even though this was a straight pattern piece, I did cut it out and I used my hole punch to cut where the feet go. It's a lot easier to do that, and then you just match up your piece and just mark where your feet go. Okay. Now I'm actually not putting feet on this bag. I just don't have any of the same color as the hardware, and so I'm just going to do it without. But if you were going to use feet, that's what you want to do. Then you're also going to have that same piece in your lining, and you're also going to have to cut a piece of foam with that same piece. Okay. We have interior zipper pocket panels. We have 2 of those in our lining with woven fuse on the back. We have our lining bottom panel, and we have 2 of those. We have our front zipper pocket panel lining. Now, this is the one piece that when you put your woven fuse on, you do not want to put it all the way to the ends. And she actually tells you, she gives you the measurements to cut that piece. You cut it a little bit smaller. You see you have 2 little pattern pieces for that. And then when you fuse it, you just fuse it onto the center of that piece. Okay. Now, the next couple of pieces I did a little bit different. So this is your interior slip pocket panel piece. And the instructions say to cut 2 pieces of your lining and 2 pieces of your woven fuse. What I did is I put it on the fold when I cut it, so I have one large piece. Then I just folded it, and all I'm going to do is top stitch that. So that saves a little bit of time. When I cut the woven fuse, I just cut it the same, I was a little short here, but I cut it the same shape. Just cut it the same way. So that's one thing I would suggest doing a little bit different. It's just one seam different, but if you stitch these together, you're going to have a seam up here at the top, which is fine because you're going to fold it on that seam. I just think it's one less step to do. So that's why I did that way. And then you're supposed to cut one foam piece for your back panel. What I suggest is to cut two foam pieces, the same size, one for your front and one for your back. Now, the pattern says to cut some smaller foam pieces for your front pieces, and then when you sew your bottom pockets to your top part, that's where your foam meets in that seam. To reduce some bulk, especially if you're using a domestic machine, I would suggest just cutting two large pieces, and I'll show you how we're going to put those on. So that's all the pieces that the pattern calls for. The extra pieces that I cut I cut two strap connectors. The way that the pattern's written, you actually sew the handles onto the main part of the bag. Once you sew that's one of the first things you do. Once you sew them, then you have the handle there that you have to sew around when you top stitch and all that. I find it easier to go ahead and cut a couple of strap connectors. We're going to attach those to the bag with a rectangle ring. And then once we're through with the bag, we'll go ahead and attach the handles. So these here are 2 by 4, 2 inches by 4 inches. And then the other thing that I cut is a zipper. This is for my interior zipper, and it's just a facing piece. She has you, and you can do your zipper this way, it is not a problem. She has you draw a box and put 2 lining pieces together, then flip them, and I'll go over that. If you want to do it that way, I'll show you how the pattern, or at least explain to you how the pattern works. I find it easier to use one of these. So what I did is I cut a piece that was 1 3/4 inches wide by 12 inches long. This interior little zipper part here that I cut out is 10 inches long, and it's a 1/2 inch wide. So if you want to follow what I'm doing, then you need to go ahead and cut this piece as well. I also like to put key fobs in all of the purses that I make, so I just went ahead and I'm going to prepare a key fob to stick in there. So for hardware, the pattern calls for 2 9-inch zippers, and this is for your exterior pockets. And I'm using Zipper by the Yard, okay? And if you're using Zipper by the Yard, she says cut 12-inch zipper for the interior pocket. Now you can use a number 3 zipper for that, or you can use a number 5 zipper for that. I'm using a number 5 zipper because I didn't have a number 3 zipper that matched. Either one will work just fine. If you're doing Zipper by the Yard, you want to cut it 12 inches. Otherwise, you want a 10-inch number 3 zipper. Then you need a 20-inch zipper for the top of the bag. And Zipper by the Yard, I just did exactly that, cut it 20 inches. Then, of course, you need zipper pulls for all of those. And if you want, you can do a zipper end for the end of the top of the zipper. If not, you can put a piece of faux leather or a piece of your external fabric on here as a zipper tab, a zipper end. Either way is fine. I'm going to use a piece of hardware. Because I am adding my straps on after the bag is done, I also needed rectangle rings. So I have 4 rectangle rings here. And then to make my straps look nice and pretty on the outside, I'm also going to put some strap ends on. So if you're going to sew your straps directly to the bag, you do not need the strap ends and you do not need the rectangle rings. Okay. Okay, so that's all your pieces. Go ahead and cut them out, get ready, and we're going to get started. The first thing we're going to start with is the straps. And the reason why is because usually you have a full bobbin and you don't have to worry about running out. That's the worst thing, is doing a strap and running out of bobbin. So you see here, I've already done one of my small straps and my longer crossbody strap. And you see how nice and flat that lays? I'm going to show you a little hint, something I learned on how to make sure your one way to make sure your strap stays flat. So if you have a domestic machine, you really do not want to put double-sided tape down the center of your strap. To do a strap, this is 4 inches. You're going to draw a line 2 inches down the center, and you can see there I've got my line. I'm putting 1/4 inch double-sided tape, as you can see, quite a ways from the line. I'm not putting it right on top of the line, because when you go to fold this in and you fold it again, that's where you're going to be stitching. And if your domestic machine does not like double-sided tape, you're going to have a hard time. So once you put the double-sided tape on, you want to go ahead and peel the backing off one side. And here's what you don't want to do. I'm going to demonstrate. Do not do this, pull and set it down, pull and set it down, and then go like this. You know, don't use your hand to flatten it out. If you do that, your strap is going to be crooked. It doesn't matter if you have a walking foot, if you don't have a walking foot, what direction you sew from, it does not matter. Because you're starting with it twisted before you even get to your machine. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and start it. Doesn't matter where. I like to start in the middle. Let me move the camera up a little bit so you can see. And then I like to come a little bit further down, place it down, and then go back towards where I've already folded and just press it down with my finger. Okay, so I'm going to come down a little bit further than my fold, press it down, and then go back and press this down with my finger. Make sure my ends are lined up, and then press it down. What I'm not going to do is now take my finger and rub it across here, because all that's going to do is pull it out of sorts and it's going to get twisted. So when I get to this side, I'm going to do the same thing. And you notice I'm putting this just shy of the line. I'm not putting this right up to the line. Can you see that? It's just shy of the line. Because when you fold your strap, you're going to have a little bit of take up in the vinyl, and you don't want it to pull. Okay, so that's nice and flat. So we're going to do the other side. Pull your backing off. Now I'm going to put it just shy of the line. And then I'm going to come a little bit further down, put it straight up, and then press it down. Okay, easy enough. Y'all get the idea here. Now, when you have a strap, when you have any kind of long seam like this, I do suggest you use a walking foot. So if you're using a domestic machine, go ahead and put your walking foot on before you sew this. So now you see I have a little bit of space here in between. And then I'm just going to fold it in half again, put some clips. And what leaving the space does is it allows you to make sure these two ends are lined up perfectly, because you have a little bit of wiggle room there to maneuver these to make sure they are perfectly lined up. And you're going to learn, if you're new to this channel, that I drop everything, like I just dropped that clip. It kind of gets comical after a while. For whatever reason, here in the sewing room, I have the dropsies. Okay. So you want to start from the end you need to sew together, and we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch down. Now you're going to see when I move you over here that I have a guide. This is just a magnetic guide. I don't know if you can see it. Here. It's just a magnetic guide that I use whenever I do straps. I know a lot of people don't use these. I see a lot of videos done without them, and I guess I'm just, I kind of have the idea that if there's a tool out there to make the bag easier to construct, go ahead and take advantage of the tool. So there's no shame in using a guide here at all. So I'm just going to back stitch a little bit, just a couple stitches. You don't have to back stitch real far. And then we're going to sew it together. And then we have our straps done. So you want to do this, like I said, with both small straps. You want to do it with your crossbody strap if you're doing a crossbody strap. And then you also want to do it with your 2 strap connectors. Now I did put a piece of double-sided tape down the center here because instead of folding it twice, we're just going to fold it once. So you're just going to fold this up. You're going to fold the other side up. Make sure your 2 ends meet. Just like that. You're not going to fold it again. Now don't top stitch this yet, because we're going to basically be top stitching it when we put it on the bag. Okay, so I'm just going to fold this up. Bring this to meet. Put a piece of clip here because my double-sided tape wasn't quite close enough to the end. And then we have our 2 strap connectors. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, the next step has you putting the feet on the bag. So you have your Decoville Heavy or Peltex on your bottom gusset piece. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to cut your holes out. You're going to mark your feet. And if you're putting feet in this bag, then you're going to go ahead and put your feet in on the 4 dots. Once you do that, then you're going to take your piece of foam and you're going to baste that foam onto this bottom gusset piece. Now the foam I'm using is a Bodeeoh foam, and I got it from Amazon. I just got a pack of it from there, and it's shouldn't say the first time I used it. I've used it a few times and I really like it because it's not as thick as some of the other foams I've used. It's just a little bit thinner. And it is fusible, but I'm not going to fuse it. Like I said, I'm just gonna base that on, okay? So you're also going to baste your side gusset pieces, the foam on there. So So we have those pieces done, and we're going to move on to the next step. In the next step, we're going to attach our either strap connectors or our handles. If you decided not to do the strap connectors with the rectangle rings, you're just going to attach your handles here. And I did want to mention that I am making the handbag size, although for the most part, the instructions are pretty much the same. So this is the top exterior front panel. I'm going to find the center, mark the center of both sides, and then you're going to measure 3.25 inches from the center towards the right and towards the left, and you're going to mark that. So I'm going to take 3.25. I'm just going to put a little mark. And same thing this way, 3.25, and mark it. Now, if you're using your straps, if you're going to just sew your straps on, what you want to do is you're going to take your strap and you're going to line your strap up to the right side of that line and onto the left side of that line. Okay, you're going to do just like this. You're going to clip those in place. And you're going to sew those on. Okay. So it's going to look like that. So my mark is here. My other mark is right here. You're going to put them on the outside of those marks and you're just going to sew that on. I am actually going to take my strap connectors and do the same thing. So I have my strap connector here. Take my rectangle ring and put this through. Probably go ahead and put just a small piece of double-sided tape on here to hold it down. Making sure I'm keeping it out of any kind of seam allowance so I don't have to worry about it gumming up my needle, although this machine can handle it, but on a domestic machine, you're probably gonna have a problem. So I'm just gonna put a little piece here. Peel that tape off. Match the ends. Do the same thing with this one. Okay. Another thing you're going to need for this bag, whether you do the handles or the straps, but you don't have to have it, but I think makes it look a lot better, is to put some rivets in here. So I'm actually going to mark a 1/2 inch down from the edge of my strap. And I'm going to draw a line there. And I'm going to sew across that line. It's going to do two things. It's going to make sure that both of my strap connectors are crossing, that stitch is crossing at the same place. And then the other thing it's going to do is it's going to keep it far enough away from my rectangle ring so that I don't have a problem sewing when I turn to come back down this other side. So I'm going to put another little piece of double-sided tape to hold it in place on my actual fabric here. Put it right down the middle so it's not in my seam allowance at all. Then I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch from the top. And I think I'm going to have to get some chalk for this because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to see this. Okay, let's see that. So 1/2 inch down. Okay. Stick these on the bag. Like that. So you could do a couple different things here. I'm going to stitch up, like I said, one side, go across where this line is, come down the other side. Then I'm going to put a rivet. You could stitch an X in here if you wanted to do that. You could stitch further down and put a rivet at the top and maybe a rivet below. There's just a couple different things you can do here. This is the way I'm gonna do this, and I think it's gonna look really good. So I have a top stitch length going on my machine. I'm gonna do about 1/8 of an inch away. I'm gonna back stitch. Pulling. I'm gonna right up to that line. And then I'm going to turn, come across it, and then come down the other side. Now, you do want to use a scrap piece of something to put underneath your foot here so that you don't mess up your hardware. Do the same thing with the other one. And then there are strap connectors on. Now, you want to go ahead and do the same thing for the back panel. Okay, from here we're going to sew our exterior middle pieces on. So you want to go ahead and clip those on. We're going to sew at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and you want to reduce your stitch length here. So now we're going to fold this down. You want to make sure your seam allowance is going down. And we're going to fold it and we're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch. Make sure you increase your stitch length to its top stitch length. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for the back panel. Next is we're going to start creating that front zipper panel. So if you feel comfortable waiting to put your zipper tabs on until after you get this together, I would suggest you do that. It's just going to help prevent you from having any bumps or having to move the zipper tab back and forth as you're sewing this next part together. So you can take your zipper tab, you're going to put it right sides together with your zipper, and you're going to sew this at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then you're going to flip that. You're going to make sure your seam allowance is staying towards the center. You're going to flip it and you're going to top stitch. Then you're going to do the same thing with the other zipper. You're going to put it on this tab, right sides together. You want to make sure your zippers are aligned here. So, you know, don't sew them on this way. Make sure your zippers here are exactly lined up. Three-eighths of an inch seam allowance. And then we're going to fold that back and we're going to do a top stitch. Okay, that was a perfect time to run out of bobbin. So I have this all top stitch. I'm just going to go ahead and trim this down so that it's even with my zipper. Then I'm going to mark the center of it. Just a tiny little snip there. Then I'm going to take my front panel and I'm going to mark the center of it. Go ahead and mark your bottom as well. You don't need that when you put your gusset on. We're going to take our zipper assembly and we're going to put it right sides down, matching up those centers. Now we're going to base this on and we're going to just use a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Just go ahead and get it so it's staying on there well. Okay. So there it is with the zippers. So now what we're going to do is take our lining panel. You remember this is the one with the woven fuse that's out of the seam allowance. We're going to place that right side down. Go ahead and mark your center first. turn this around so it's facing me. Put it right side down, matching up my centers. And then go ahead and clip that on. Now we're going to use a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and get that sewn on. Okay, from there, we are going to flip this and we're going to top stitch. So when you top stitch, you want to make sure that your lining piece is down, and you can go give this a press, which is what I'm going to do before I stitch this. And I'm going to pull this away, and then we're going to top stitch right on here. But I'm going to go press this first. Okay, I gave that a good press, and now I'm just going to top stitch. So now we're going to take the lining, we're going to bring it up to the back end of the zipper, making sure the sides of your pockets are aligned, and we're going to clip it to the zipper. Okay, so we're just going to base this at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, my camera went out on me there, sorry about that. So I have the pocket basted on, and all I did was just, like I said, fold the pocket up and then just sew that at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now, before we go any further, we do want to put our zipper pulls on. Okay, so you want to pull your zipper apart, and the idea, the thing that makes it easier is if you come in at an angle on these zipper pulls, or when you put your zipper pull on, instead of trying to just put it on straight, you want to come in at an angle. So let me see if I can do this. And then before I get too far with it, I want to make sure my ends are lined up. And I can see they're off just a tad, so let me pull it out. Try it again. Okay, this right side's going in a little bit too quick. Do the same thing on the other side. So now what we want to do is separate this pocket. So you have, or you should have your center clipped here, and if not, you can go ahead and do that now. You also want to make sure you have your center clipped at the bottom, which I did that ahead of time. So I'm just going to take a ruler and line this up. And just draw a chalk line down. Now actually I see the way that, the reason why I did the handbag size in this is because the tote size, the pattern would not have been centered on these pockets. Where on the handbag side, this pattern was perfectly centered with these pockets. And I can actually see, I have a line here going straight down the pattern, and that's where I want to sew. It's just the way the designs are, it's the way these little, I guess, diamonds come together. If I can tell you, if I don't sew down that line, it's probably gonna look off, even if that's not straight. It's going to look off. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew down that line. Now she suggests 2 lines. And actually, I think I'm just going to do 1, because I think if I do 2, in my case, it's going to interfere with this pattern too much. I just want to do 1 straight down this center line right here. So kind of do what your pattern dictates. Sometimes you have to deviate from the pattern depending on what your fabric is that you're using. Just a side note. So I'm just going to start from the top. Now she does say to go ahead and stitch through your zipper tab, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And there you go. Now, from here, we want to put our top panel on. So we're going to take the top panel that we used, or that we made in our first step. We're going to line up our centers. Now you do have your zipper pulls to contend with this time, so just keep that in mind. You're going to stitch this on using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now we're going to top stitch this. If you don't have, I have faux leather here, I cannot iron it. If you don't have that, you can go ahead and iron this before you do that, just to hold it open. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and start here, and I'm just going to baste this closed all the way down. Now I'm not going to stitch down here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, close my zipper. I probably should have done that before I did my top panel. But I'm going to come down and I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to do the same thing over here to baste all this closed. So now we're going to trim our zipper and go ahead and trim your pocket. Now what we want to do is put our foam piece on. Let's go ahead and baste that on. So in the pattern, you would have already had foam up here, and you would have had some down here. And in order to help reduce the bulk in this seam right here, we're going to wait and put it all on at the same time, which is what we're doing right now. So go ahead and put a few clips to hold this in place. We're going to baste this on. Nothing fancy. Just go ahead and get it on. front panel is complete. Fun stuff. Isn't that awesome? Now that my foam is on, I'm going to go ahead and put a rivet in each of these strap connectors, and I'm also going to put my name on there, my nameplate. Okay, so now what we'll do is the same thing for the back panel. Well, not exactly the same thing. We're not going to have zippers, but we're going to take our back panel piece. We're going to stitch it on right sides together. Then we're going to leave the seam allowance here. We're going to fold this up. And we're going to baste on the middle panel here. From here, we're going to baste our foam on. Our back panel is done. So again, I'm going to go ahead and put some rivets in here. And then we will move on, and I believe the next thing we're going to be working on is the lining. So you can take one of your main lining pieces. You're going to measure 2.5 inches down. Now I'm going to show you how the pattern says to do this zipper pocket, and then I'm going to do it with the overlay that I cut. So you have two different options here. So the way the pattern says is you're going to measure 2.5 inches down, and you're going to draw a line. Now, before I get too much further, I am going to mark my centers. You can do that however your favorite way to mark centers is. I like to fold mine in half, as you've seen. Put a little snip. Okay. So from here, you're going to come 3/8 of an inch down from this line you just drew, and we're going to draw another line. So 3/8 down. Then from the center, now for the tote bag size, this box is going to be 9 inches. For the, excuse me, I said that backwards. For the handbag size, this is going to be 9 inches. For the tote size, this is going to be 10 inches. So you're going to find your center, and you're going to measure over 4.5 inches from the center point. So we're going to do 4.5. And just draw a little side box, and then 4.5. Okay. So there is our box. Now you're going to put that piece wrong side down, and you're going to grab one of your zipper pocket pieces. You're going to find your centers, which I had already done on this piece. You're going to measure 1.5 inches down, and you're going to line up the centers, and you're going to pin this in place. Now I do suggest you use pins on this, because you're going to be flipping it over and you're going to be sewing that box. And if you've done zipper pockets before, This should be very familiar to you. So now what you're going to do is you're going to sew all around this box. Then you're going to cut down the center. You're going to cut your little triangles to the corners and then pull this pocket piece through and then press it. And then you're going to have a nice opening for your zipper. Okay? So that's how the pattern says to do it. And if you don't want to do a zipper overlay, that's how you're going to proceed. But what we're going to do is we're going to take our zipper overlay. We're going to get rid of this pocket piece for just a second. We're going to put some double-sided tape. Down each side here. Now the reason why I do my zipper pockets this way is because, for two reasons. One, I think it's easier. I get, in my opinion, a better looking pocket. And then number two is I think that the zipper overlay adds a sophistication to the bag. I've never had a lot of luck with that pull through method. It just, you know, as you sew, you're going to realize you've got your favorite methods. Things are going to work better for you, and what works better for me may not work better for somebody else. So just do what is easiest for you and what you enjoy doing. Okay, so from here, what we want to do is we want to put this zipper overlay exactly where that box is. We're going to do it on the right side, but I want to measure down to see how far, because we can't go 2.5 inches down because we have to compensate for this part of the zipper overlay. So I'm just going to kind of line this up and see how far down that is. And that is 1 3/4 inches. So we're going to turn this around. I know where my center is. I'm going to find the center of my zipper overlay. I'm going to come down 1 3/4 inches. And then I'm going to peel the backing off one side only. And I'm just going to lay that right there at the center mark. Mark this again. I like to just put a little crease in this. Crease doesn't stay very long, so you got to be quick once you do it. Okay, right there. I'm going to line up that up with the ruler. Go ahead and put a little pressure. Then I'm going to take the bottom backing off. And when I do, I'm just going to kind of let this go and let it fall where it wants to, because this faux leather is going to keep its shape. And if I try to force it into a specific position, it's going to end up getting distorted. So once it's where it wants to be, I'm just going to smooth that down. And now I'm going to do a top stitch on the outside of this overlay. Now I'm just going to tie these threads off. I usually do about 3 knots. And then when you cut your tails, I don't cut them super short because I'm afraid the knot's just going to come undone. So what I typically do is leave about an inch or so. And then I just use some tape to secure these down. And I use double-sided tape for that. Just don't peel the backing off, and because because let's face it, double-sided tape is very sticky and it's going to do its job. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to cut down the middle of this and cut out all the fabric. So this does not have to be pretty. It does not have to be exact. All you want to do is make sure that, number one, you don't cut your overlay, and number two, you cut the fabric far enough that you can't see it from the front. So when I get to the edge here, I'm just going to stick the tip of my scissors underneath that overlay and cut. And then do the same thing on this side. And then I flip it over, cut sideways, and then just cut all the way down. Now you don't want to put your double-sided tape too close to one end. Number one, because you don't want to get it in your seam allowance and have it in your machine or in your needle if you can. And the second thing is, if you put it too close to the inside of this, you're not going to be able to cut off this excess. So just make sure when you put that double-sided tape down, you put it down in the middle of your overlay. And when we get done here, we are going to have a good looking zipper opening. Okay, so see from the back, it doesn't have to be pretty. From the front, ooh, it's so pretty. Okay, so we're gonna set that aside for just a second. And now we're gonna take our two zipper pocket pieces and we're going to tape our zipper pocket zipper. Now, you can wait to put the zipper, I'm gonna wait a second to put that on. And what I'm going to do is just clip this, the wrong side of the zipper to the right side of the zipper pocket. We're just going to sew that on. I usually use a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. Flip this up, and you can press this, or you can finger press, however you, of course, if you have waterproof canvas, you probably don't want to press it, but we're going to just top stitch that to help hold it down. Just makes it a little easier. So now we're going to do the same thing with the other piece. We're going to take the pocket piece, right side up, zipper, wrong side down, match up your zipper pockets. Okay? So you don't want to sew it like this, because you're going to have a problem when you go to put it in. You just want to go ahead and match up the sides of the pocket. Let's go ahead and put a couple clips. So now I'm going to put my zipper pull on. You'll be able to see how this little fork works. Stick that on. Pull my zipper apart here. Try to do it sideways so you can see. And I'm just going to come in at an angle. It's going to go right on. And see how even that goes on? It's just nice to have, the fork is just like a third hand. It works out well. Okay. So now I want my zipper to move to the left when closing. We're going to put some double-sided tape on here. And we're going to lay this zipper right inside our zipper opening. if I can find the end of my double-sided tape. Here it is. So when I put this double-sided tape on, I usually put it right at the edge of the zipper on both the top and the bottom. I find that really works the best. Okay. Just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off the backing of one side. Lay this in. And then peel off the other side. Thread right here. Lay it in. Okay. So we're going to go ahead now and sew on the inside of this to close this up. Make sure your zipper pocket's open. Close it, you're going to close sew your zipper closed. I'm not going to be able to put tape on this one, obviously, because it's in the inside of the pocket. So I'm just going to burn the edges just to kind of singe it so that it will stay. I remember at one point seeing a post on one of the groups, what's the most dangerous part of sewing? And everybody had their own, you know, little theories, like don't put your drink on your sewing machine or rivets or whatever. For me, it's a lighter. I don't know why. I have literally gotten to the end of a bag, tried to singe something and ruined the bag. Just terrible with it, and I don't know why, but I am. So I'm going to very carefully, and maybe it's because I have this big old lighter, but that's all I have, so just kind of singe these, and then we're going to close our pocket. So I try to make sure my ends are sticking out real good. Okay. So now we are going to be pulling this bag through this pocket. So, well, we'll be pulling it through the lining, but we're going to use the pocket to sew up the bottom. And when you use this method, you're going to have one pocket's going to be larger than the other. And that's okay. Just cut that off, the longer piece off. And then we're going to sew up these sides. Now, when I sew up the sides, I like to, and I learned this, I think Lauren Mormino had this on one of her YouTube videos. I like to just take this bottom and flip it up. We're not sewing the bottom, but we're going to sew the bottom flipped like this, and it just makes it easier for your ends to turn. Now you can also press these if you'd like, and the pattern says to press them, I guess I'm just too lazy to walk over to my iron. Okay, so we're gonna sew these closed. Let me trim these down. Okay, so now you can actually take this and pull it like this, and your ends are going to already be folded for you. And then I can go and press these if I would like, just to kind of hold them. But that kind of helps that end stay up. Okay, so we have one side done, easy enough, right? Came out really good. So now let's look at our slip pocket. Our slip pocket, we cut one large piece, and that was just to save us sewing an extra seam and all that kind of good stuff. If you have two separate pieces here, you want to sew them right sides together along the top. You're going to turn, press, and you're going to end up with something that looks just like this. So we're going to start by top stitching. Okay, from here, we are going to take our other side, our other lining side, and we're going to line up our edges here. And we're going to sew this pocket on. We're going to baste it on. And then we're also going to divide the middle. Now, you can divide this into as many pockets as you want. I always like to make sure that I have a pocket that will fit a cell phone. And that is typically about 6 inches, I find. 5 to 6 inches fits pretty much any cell phone. So let me get my ruler here. And let's see, so this is the center. And that's going to give us, well, it's going to give us about a 6-inch pocket. If I go right down the center. So I think I'm going to do that. Just go ahead and draw a line. So we're going to start over here. We're going to go all the way down. We're going to go up, over one, down, and then around the other side. Get our pocket on. Now my pocket is a little bit bigger than my lining for whatever reason. I obviously did not do a very good job cutting, so I'm just going to trim that off so that when I sew my gusset on, I know I will be sewing it to the right size here. Sometimes that happens, and that's okay. Okay, before I go any further, I'm going to add a rivet right here in the middle. I think that by doing that, it adds a little bit of stability, because you think about it, these pockets are going to be pulled on quite a bit. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So by putting a rivet there, again, it adds a touch of class, but it also stabilizes it. So when I put my rivet in, I am going to have to put a little piece of, I usually put a little piece of Bodeeoh heavy back here just to kind of hold it so it doesn't pull through, or, even with the woven fuse, sometimes it's not thick enough. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my rivet in, and then we will come back and we will start working on the zipper panel, the upper zipper panel. Okay, zipper panel time. So this bag does have a zipper closure. So we need to prepare a zipper. So the first thing I want to do is take and mark a line on my zipper. I usually do about a 1/2 inch down. So that the two lines are right directly across from each other. That's probably really hard to see because it's black. You're going to pull them apart, and right where your line is, you're just going to squeeze right there, right on the line, and then take that part you squeezed up to the zipper teeth and just put a pin. Okay, so we're just going to do it on the other side, squeeze right on that line, bring it up to the teeth, and then just put a pin. Now you can hand stitch this closed, or I say closed, you can hand stitch this to itself so that you can take your pin out, or you can use your machine, however you feel most comfortable. I know you guys can't see this, but I'm just stitching right up the side right here. Not any place near the teeth, just up the side, just to hold it closed. Now I'm gonna make one small change to how we're gonna construct this zipper panel. You're gonna take 2 of your pieces, okay, you got 4 of them, right? You're gonna take 2 and you're gonna put them right sides together, and you're going to just stitch the end. You can use about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the other one. Put double-sided tape on both sides of this. I'm just going to put it on the very edge of my zipper. And again, you don't have to do this. You can just clip in place if you would like. Okay. Okay. So let's do this one more time. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel off the backing. Lay this down right on the edge. Then I'm going to peel off this backing. I'm going to fold this down right over it and match up all my edges. Okay. So this is what you have. And your zipper is inside of there. So now you want to do the other side in the other direction. So when this is done, this zipper is going to be going this way. So I want to make sure I put this one this way. Okay, so now we're going to stitch, and we're going to cross over this line, and we're going to stitch all the way down using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, before you get to the end here, you want to take your ends of your zipper panel and you want to fold them up about 1/4 of an inch. Just make sure they're even with each other so that you have a nice finish here at the end. You don't want to leave those edges raw. So what that looks like is that there. Okay. You're going to want to just clip this, take a little bit of the bulk off, and clip this corner. And then when we turn this out, we should have a really good looking zipper panel. I have a little ball turner here that I use. Now before I top stitch this, I am going to press it. Little thread right there, get that off. So there's one end of our zipper panel. Let's do the other. Okay, I have my zipper panels all pressed. So now I'm going to go ahead and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper. And then I'm going to top stitch down each end, and I'm just going to close this bottom section. Okay, both of our zipper panels are done. They're both top stitched and ready to go. So next thing we're going to do is attach it to the lining. So we need our lining top pieces, and we need our 2 finished lining pieces. Now you need to figure out what you want in the back. I'm going to have a zipper pocket in the back, so I'm just going to lay this aside for a second. And you want to find the center of your zipper panel here. Let's find the center of both of those. You should have already found the center of your panel here. You want to place the wrong side of your zipper panel on the right side of your lining. You're going to go ahead and match your centers, and then we're going to baste this on. Let's find the center of it. And we're going to stitch this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. We're going to make sure the seam allowance is going up. We're going to take our top panel, we're going to fold it up, and then we're going to top stitch at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, we have the zipper on both, zipper panel pieces on both lining pieces, so we're going to put that aside, and we're going to work on our gusset next. So for the lining and the main fabric, these are constructed in exactly the same way. We're going to go ahead and clip this together. We're going to sew this at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other gusset piece. And we're going to do the same thing with the lining pieces. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take our seam allowance and we're going to push it towards the bottom piece. Okay, so they're going to go like this. And we're going to top stitch on the bottom piece. Now on your bottom piece here, you can cut some of this foam out to help with the bulk. I'm actually going to do that. And I'm actually even going to take my basting stitches out right here where I basted the foam on and cut it out because it is still a little bit thick. So if you're using a domestic machine, you definitely want to consider doing this. It'll help your bulk. Do it on both sides. And if you truly basted this on using a large stitch length, it should be easy to come out. So now when we fold that towards the bottom, there's a lot less bulk there. now we're going to go ahead and attach the gussets to the main panels. So we're getting close. We're in the home stretch here. So let's start with our main panels. We want to find the center of our gusset. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our strap connectors for our optional crossbody strap. Now, if you're not doing the crossbody strap, then you don't need to do this step. But we're going to go ahead and show you how to do it. You're going to make these straps the strap connectors exactly the same way you did your strap, where you put double-sided tape down the center. You're going to fold your ends in. You're going to put your D-ring on. Now, in this case, because we are not going to be stitching this on top of the bag, we want to go ahead and top stitch this first. So let me go ahead and do that. Get this one done first. Now, there are several different ways you can attach these straps. We're going to go ahead and do it the way the pattern says. So we're going to put our D-rings on. We're going to baste this close on both of these. We're going to take our completed gusset and we're going to line them up right here on the center. So go ahead and find your center. And then you want to just line that up. And then we're going to baste that on. And as you saw, I did a little bit more than a baste. I want to make sure it's not going to come off. So when we sew our 1/2 inch seam allowance, this will come down like this, and that will be the strap connector for the crossbody. Okay? All right. So go ahead and grab, you want to mark your centers of your gusset, grab your main piece, and you want to go ahead and cut curves or snip your curves here. You'll see I did that already, just small little snips in the seam allowance. Now your seam allowance to sew this on is a 1/2 inch, so you can cut a good 1/4 inch in on the gusset pieces, or on the rounded edges here. So we're going to line up our centers. And you can also snip your foam out of your seam allowance if you are using a domestic machine. That'll help this help with the bulk. So I usually put 3 or 4 clips here, and then you're going to come around and you're going to match up your top here. Now the key to putting these gussets on is to snip. It's going to make it a lot easier to get it sewn in place. Now this is not a super difficult gusset to do. Some of them are very sharp curves, and those are a little bit more difficult. This is a good one to start with if you're a little intimidated by these and you're not sure what you should do. This is a great one to start with. Okay, go ahead and get your clips on. Don't be afraid to put a bunch of clips. And then we're going to do the other side. You really want to sew it from this side. As you go around your curve, you're just going to take it slow and make sure you don't have any tucks in this. And if you need to stop and adjust, you can certainly do that, no problem. So I'm coming to my curve and I'm just going to make sure it's nice and flat right here. And then just stop, pick up my foot and kind of adjust a little bit. Do the same thing here. Time. Okay, get into my corner, so I'm going to go ahead and lay this flat. Just a little bit here. And then one more time. You just want to make sure you don't have any tucks in your go ahead and check it out, see how it looks. Now I have not clipped my seam allowances yet, so once I do, this will lay even better. Okay, let's see. You know it's black, it's hard to see. You have no tucks, it's nice and neat. A little bit right there, but once I think I trim my seam allowances, it'll lay nice and flat. So now if you want to, you can go ahead and do one more line of stitching, 1/8 of an inch away from this one, between this stitch and the seam allowance. And that kind of helps if you have a problem with your stitches showing in the front, go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to, between the end of my fabric and the seam I just did, stitch about 1/8 of an inch away one more time all the way around. Now I'm going to trim my seam allowance. Okay, and that's one side done. So now we're going to do the same thing with the other side. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for the lining. Okay, so you see I left a hole here. Now I'm going to trim my seam allowances, and I'm going to not trim the seam allowance here at the hole. You'll see I did a little stitch going down, and that's just going to help when I go to turn the bag, line up where the actual bottom of the bag needs to be folded up, or where I need to basically start stitching and end stitching on the other side. So we're going to take the bag and we're going to turn it so our right side is out. Okay. Fold these. Okay, now we're going to, I'm gonna lift you up a little bit. We're going to stick the, take these off, bag inside of our lining. Now I know I want my zipper pocket to be in the back. Make sure your zipper pocket is open. Although we're gonna be pulling it through the hole, so it's not the end of the world if it's not. But I do want the front of my bag, let's see. My zipper is gonna close this way. I want it to close on the left. So I want the front of my bag to go against my slip pocket. So I'm gonna stick it in there. Okay. Now make sure that you stick your zipper inside here. You do not want to stitch over your zipper. We're going to line up our seams first. Go on the other side and do the same thing. Okay, then go ahead and clip the rest of the top of your bag. Start here on the side. Move you over just a little bit. Okay, now we want to trim this seam allowance down to 1/4 of an inch before we turn it. Okay. So now let's turn it, see how it looks. And actually this lining looks really good in there. So because I'm using a linen for my lining and a fabric for my face here, I'm gonna press this before I do any kind of top stitching. I want it to lay nice and flat. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that before we do the top stitching. Okay, I have everything pressed and I have my bag clipped. So I'm ready to top stitch. Now, if you're using a domestic machine, go ahead and remove the case to make your machine a free arm, and it's gonna be a lot easier. You can just stick the bag in the free arm and stitch around. If you're using an industrial machine, a flatbed like this, you're going to have to try to flatten the bag, okay? And this is a big enough bag, you can do it. And you're going to stick this under your needle and you're going to stitch all the way around. Just do a little bit at a time, make an adjustment, stitch, a little bit at a time, make an adjustment, stitch. I have a cylinder arm machine that I use to top stitch. So we're going to move over there to that cylinder arm and I'm going to show you how I do that. Okay, here we are at the cylinder arm machine. And this is a Texo 2750 machine. It is a cylinder arm machine, and here you can see cylinder arm. And I use it mostly for top stitching, although it does come with a flatbed table that I am going to try. This is a fairly new machine for me, and once I put the flatbed table on there, it's just like my Conso flatbed. So anyway, I'll be doing more videos on that and experimenting with it. But in the meantime, we're just going to go ahead and top stitch this bag. So I have everything threaded, tested it out, make sure everything looks good on the machine as far as the stitching. And we're just going to stick it in and let it rip. Now, this machine has a built-in edge guide, which I love, absolutely love. So we'll be using that once we get past our D-ring connector here. It also has a needle down positioner, which is wonderful. Now, when I put my nameplate on here, I got a little close to the top. So I'm just going to stop right here, pick up on the other side. I'm going to leave some tails because I can see that's going to interfere with it a little bit. So I'm going to have to do a couple of hand stitches to get it as close because I do not want to ruin that. So I'm just going to come back down and then keep on trucking. Make sure your zipper tails are out of the way. Do not want to stitch over those. I'm sorry my hand is in the way there. I like to hold my bag in the back here. Lift this up. And I broke a needle. All right, so I'm gonna get that needle fixed and then we'll come back and continue on. Okay, I got my needle fixed. I'm not really sure why I broke a needle, but it always happens when you top stitching, right? It's like inevitable that that's when it's gonna happen. But that's okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back. I'm going to try to get in the exact same holes because of course not only did it break while I was top stitching, it broke while I was sewing on my faux leather. So now I've got holes in here. So let's see if I can get in the same holes. All right, looks like I've gotten the same holes, yay. Here, let me get this fixed here. Oh, the camera's acting loopy. Okay. So what I'm going to do is feed my tails with a needle through. I'm going to bring the front to the back, and then I'm going to take and tie a little knot, and then just take it and bring it on down and clip it off, okay? So that way I don't have to worry about any back stitches here. You'll see here in the front, I'm going to have to take and do a couple of stitches by hand in this direction so I match up to the same distance as over here. And that's just two stitches, 3 stitches, and I'll be good to go there. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I've got a couple of tails, hide those. And then from there, we'll be able to close up our lining, put our zipper on or zipper end on, and then get our handles on. So it is looking good, and we are cruising along. Won't be long now, we'll be done. Okay, I'm going to actually show you what I mean by this. So here I have tails where I ended. So I'm going to take and thread a needle with the front tail. I'm going to, in one of the holes that's already been made by the machine, go ahead and thread it through to the back. Okay, so now both my tails are in the back. So now I'm going to tie a knot. And then I'm going to thread both of my tails through the needle again. I'm going to go into one of the holes that's already here that the machine made. And I'm going to just come on down the lining. You don't want to go all the way through to the front. You're just going to come down, come out somewhere in the lining, doesn't matter where, and pull. So now my tails are coming out down here. Then I can just snip them off, and then they're hidden. Okay? So I'm going to do a couple of stitches up here in the front, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. That's what I mean by hiding my tails. All right, so let's close the bottom of this bag up. So we're going to pull out the zipper pocket. We're going to reach in, we're going to grab the bottom of the lining, and we're going to pull it out the zipper pocket. Clip these together. Where we did our little jog down, we're just going to pick up right here at this corner. We're just going to sew all the way across to the other corner. And then you can go ahead and close your pocket. Okay, let's put our zipper head on. So You can either do this with a fork or you can do it with your hands, and just make sure your teeth are lined up at the bottom. Make sure it works real good, which it does. I want to put a tail on. Now you can either use a piece of hardware to put this tail on, or you can use either a piece of your accent fabric or your main fabric to create a zipper tab. I'm going to use a piece of hardware, which is just a little zipper end here. All right, good to go. So now our zipper top is done. Stick that end in there. So now let's go ahead and finish up, put the straps on, and then we will be done this bag. So I have my two short straps that I did, and I say short straps, they're the handbag straps. So I'm just going to feed this through the D-ring. Now, I'm going to put a rivet in here. You can stitch. Here, I'm going to show you. If you want, you can go ahead and stitch across here. Or you can just put a rivet. I'm also going to be putting end caps on here, so I want to make sure that I have enough space to put the rivet and sew if that's what I want to do. Now, I have a bag that I made for myself, and I just riveted the handles on, and I stuffed that thing, boy, I'll tell you, I'm a tote bag girl, and that thing is stuffed to the brim. And I have never had a problem with those handles ever coming off or even starting to come loose. So I'm really comfortable with just putting a rivet on here. But if you're not, then you can certainly add a line of top stitching. That's not a problem. Before I add the rivet though, I do want to go ahead and add one of my end connectors, because I want to make sure that, like I say, I'm going to have enough room and I'm not going to put it too close and then think, uh-oh. So I'm just going to make sure that this fits on there really good, which it does. I'm going to put a little bit of glue in there. And this Gorilla Glue comes with a brush. I'm just going to brush some on the end. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that for the other 4 connector pieces here. This one here and then the other 2 sides. Okay, for your crossbody strap, you're going to need a couple of swivel clips and a strap adjuster. Now, I failed to mention that in the beginning of the video, and I apologize for that, but I realized that I did not have a strap adjuster, and the swivel clips that I have are 3/4 inch, not 1 inch, and my strap is 1 inch. So we are going to improvise. What I did was I cut my strap down to about 30 inches. I edge coated these edges here, okay? Then I cut another piece of my faux leather and I cut it 1 1/4 by 3. Put double-sided tape down the center, put the edges together, and then top stitch. So I end up with 2 strips like this. You're going to take the end of your strap and you're going to open it up, okay? So if the middle of this strap does not have any double-sided tape in it. So if you need to stick your awl down in there or something to get it to open up, you can certainly do that. So now what we're going to do is to take this strip, stick it around our swivel clip, and then we're going to stuff this up in the center of the strap. Now it's going to take a little bit of maneuvering and you may have to do one side at a time. You're definitely going to need something to help you get it up there. And that's going to be my awl for me. And you just want to try to get both sides about the same distance up in there. Oops, and don't pull it out like I just did. All right, I'm gonna try this again. Put one end in. Trying to get it to lay flat in there. Okay, put the swivel clip on, and then let's put the other end in. So I could order hardware, but the way the mail has been going these days, I don't think I want to wait for that. Instead, I'm just going to improvise and make do with what I have. Okay, so we end up with something that looks like this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch it closed right here at the end. So right across here, and then I'm going to put a rivet in there. Okay, here we are with the completed bag. So we have the shoulder strap, which you could theoretically, if you wanted to, put over your, I left it long enough that you could wear it as a crossbody, although it's just not adjustable. Then you could of course take this off if you wanted to and just use the regular handles. We have our zippers. We have our nice fitting interior. Look how pretty that is. And just like that, we are done. So I hope that you found this tutorial very informative. I hope that you enjoy making your bag if this is the one you decide to make. I hope that the swap goes fantastic, and until next time, happy sewing.